Hello and welcome back to Political Live, the Future of Farming and Food Summit. For those who are only joining us now, my name is Zosia Banat and I'm a political reporter and a moderator of our next panel debate, which will be about the food labeling policy in the EU. Before we start introducing our guests and speaking about the topic, I would like to remind all of you that you are welcome to ask questions during the summit and after the summit via our platform Swapcard. I know that there have been some technical issues for all those who submitted questions before during the previous summit. We're very, very sorry because of some errors. We couldn't really see it. It's not like I ignored you and didn't want to ask the question. It's genuinely something going on with the iPad. We hope this has been sorted now, and we can. I will be very happy to direct your questions to our panelists. And having said that, this is probably the high time to introduce our panelists for this panel. So today I am joined online by Claire Burry, Deputy Director General at DG Sante at the European Commission. Okay. Hello. Sorry, I couldn't see you for a moment. Now I have all of you here. Welcome, Claire. Paolo De Castro, the member of the European Parliament. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hello. Camille Perrin, the Senior Food Policy Officer at the European Consumer Organization.
Hello, good afternoon.
And I'm also very happy to welcome our first on-site guest, Agnès Martin, who is Health and Diet Advocacy Director at Danone. She's joining me on the stage today in Paris. Let me start the discussion with Ms. Burry from the European Commission. So maybe at first, let me tell you what we know so far, what we know from the farm to fork policy. We know that the Commission is going to propose a harmonized mandatory nutrition labeling and origin labeling for certain products by the end of 2022, and that the Commission is looking at the sustainable food labeling framework by the end of 2024, and also will consider options for animal welfare labels. So, Ms. Burry, I would like to ask you about all these things we don't know. So, like, how is it going? What's the process behind the closed doors in the Commission when it comes to these policies? What can we expect in the upcoming months? I mean, this time frame is still a little bit extended, but I'm sure the work is already underway, and you can share some insights with us.
Okay, so thanks, Zosia, and it's really great to be here today. Thanks very much for giving us the opportunity to explain where we've got to. I'll start with the front of pack labelling, where I want to be clear at the outset, which is that the Commission has made no choices yet about what this mandatory front of pack labelling will look like. We are in the process, we've commissioned a study, which is getting underway now. In the coming months, we will be having a public consultation, and we will be having targeted consultation and discussions with stakeholders. And that will happen towards the end of this year. And then next year, before the proposal comes at the end of 2022, we'll be working very intensively on an impact assessment. I want to underline as well that we will have a targeted consultation of SMEs. I think we're very conscious of the fact that whatever the Commission comes up with by way of proposal has to be manageable for the smaller operators on the market. So we will be targeting a consultation specifically on them in terms of making sure that whatever we propose will be something that the small and medium-sized enterprises can adapt to. I think obviously we want to make sure that what we do is going to be science-based. So we've already asked EFSA, the European Food Safety Agency, for input. And we've asked our Joint Research Centre to come up with a scientific literature review, which will give us a view on what's the latest impact on consumers of the various different schemes that are out there. And you probably know that there are several schemes which are out there already. And now we would like to gather information on what the impact of those schemes has been on consumers. Now, labelling, of course, isn't all of the story. The reason why we're doing this is to try and improve diet. Unfortunately, we know that European diets are not where they should be. More than half of our adult population is overweight. So we're trying to make sure that through better information, consumers will be able to make better choices. We can make the healthy choice the right one for them. But alongside the labelling, we need to have more awareness, communication, education, and so on. Just to finish, if I may, a couple of words, because you mentioned sustainable labelling and possible animal welfare labelling as well. On the sustainable labelling, this will be part of a bigger proposal for a framework of sustainable food systems that we make in 2023. I imagine that will have different elements in it. It will be based, of course, on what we're doing on front of pack, because we need to take that into account. It will also be based on work that's being done on green claims on the environment, because obviously that's also part of the sustainability package, and on the animal welfare labelling. Now, on that, we have published an inception impact assessment. We are gathering information. And the idea is that animal welfare labelling would be part of an initiative, again, that will come in 2023, where we will do a revision of the existing animal welfare legislation. But all these different initiatives on labelling have to be complementary. There has to be synergies between them. And there also has to be, I'm very conscious of this because it came through very clearly when we did our citizens dialogue in the run up to the UN Food Systems Summit, that we need to be careful that too much information can kill information. So we need to really be working on bringing all these things together so that consumers have better information, healthy information, more transparency, but information that is really usable for them. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I was actually, sorry, just a very quick follow-up. I was actually wondering when, like we mentioned all these labels, and I was just wondering if we get like some meat or like a dairy product in 2025 when all these are sort of in place, will we have 5 different labels on one packaging, or are you sort of aiming to reduce that number and making one framework? How do you think it will look like?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to say now exactly what it's going to look like. But I think, for example, on the sustainable labelling there, what we would be working towards is bringing together different elements of information. We have to take into account the fact that we've already got, for example, organic labels and information. But I think somehow we will need to combine the labels. As I say, not really possible at this stage exactly what it's going to look like, but very conscious of the fact that we need quality information for consumers. And when we say the quality as well, it means targeted and it means readable and understandable and not too much information.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you very much. So you started with then the front of pack nutrition label, and let me just follow up a little bit on that. Of course, this has sparked a huge debate, also a political debate in Brussels, the issue of nutrition labeling. There are several schemes that are sort of under review, that are implemented in different countries. And the one that has been gaining the most traction is probably the French one, the traffic light Nutri-Score. And I would like to ask Camille, actually, because I know that the European Consumers Organization has backed Nutri-Score as the right label for consumers. Can you just tell us in a few sentences why is that the best label?
Yes, certainly. Good afternoon. Thank you for this question, for having us today on this panel. I think I'd like perhaps to take a step back before answering the question. And as Claire rightly said, we have today in the EU a third of children and over half of adults who are overweight or obese. And we know that excess weight is a risk factor for several diseases, including cancer, diabetes. And sadly, we also recently found out that it's also a risk factor for severe illness from COVID. So we do have an obesity epidemic today in the EU, which we have to tackle. And experts recognize that front of pack labeling is one of the tools to help guide consumers towards healthier choices. It's not a silver bullet. Other measures are required, yet it's part of the solution. And together with our members, we think that there are a number of criteria that have to be met for a front of pack label to be really usable and meaningful for consumers. The first one is that such label has to be government-led. What do we mean by that? Of course, different food chain actors can be consulted during the development process, but at the end of the day, we really need governments to be in the driver's seat to ensure that the label can be trusted and seen as credible by consumers. Another very important point is that such labels should have an interpretive element. We know that consumers make food purchase decisions in a matter of seconds, so they need a label that includes, for instance, a color code that really help them to identify at a glance the healthier options, say, among yogurts or breakfast cereals. And it's especially important for lower socioeconomic groups. And the third and last criterion I want to highlight is the need for such label to be based on robust independent science. And it's critical to show not only that consumers like a label, it's important, but it's not enough. It's really crucial to show that consumers can actually use the label and understand it properly. And what I mean with that is that you need to demonstrate that consumers can classify products correctly based on the label. And the reason why we support the Nutri-Score is that it ticks all these 3 boxes I've just outlined. And we also know that most recently, the WHO, the World Health Organization's Cancer Agency, called for the implementation of the Nutri-Score in the EU because it's been shown to be the most effective scheme with consumers. So that's why, for all these reasons, that indeed we do support the Nutri-Score and hope that it will be the scheme that will be selected for EU-wide rollouts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Camille. I would now give the floor to Mr. De Castro, who, as the Italian MEP, probably has a slightly different view.
Very different. Very different. Well, first of all, let me thank.
Could you please elaborate a little bit?
Let me thank Politico. It's good time to make this reflection. It's good time to make a clear vision of where we are going. So let me thank Claire Bury for the presentation. I very much like that the idea to have a science-based proposal. So I'm waiting the impact assessment by the Commission, and we are very much confident that the outcome of this process will confirm what we believe. And what we believe is clear. It is totally unacceptable that honey, orange juice, extra virgin olive oil of the cheese comté would be spotted as red, so dangerous for human health, where French fries, light coca, frozen bolognese pizza, or other products will be green, so will be suggesting to our children. This is not acceptable at all. So this is the reason we don't like Nutri-Score. Nutri-Score make a score to the food. We want to give information to the consumer. The consumer should have whole information to make the choice. So this is why we are totally in favor for the origin of the food. The consumer want to know where come from the raw material, where come from the agricultural product. They want to know the characteristics of the product, but they should not decide this is good and this is bad, because it depends on the diet, depends on how much eat of this cheese, of this honey, or the other products. So what I prefer is the system who give information and not give the score. And this is the Italian Nutri-Inform, but I like even the Scandinavian all the other one, using in the northern country, who give the spot green for the specific food, who have a very healthy result. So this is a very, very tough discussion. I think the Parliament, when we vote the farm to fork strategy last week, and I hope in plenary that will be acceptable, that will be the idea to inform consumer, not to push the consumer to choose. Inform consumer, give information, not choose for them. This is my point of view.
Perfect. Agnes, I will come to you in a second. Maybe I will just give Camille the room to sort of answer to these worries that Mr. De Castro has just expressed.
Yes, first of all, I can say that we fully concur with Mr. De Castro on the origin elements. It's definitely true that consumers want to know where their food comes from. So at least we have one point of full agreement. Then on Nutri-Score, obviously, we disagree. I'm just perhaps want to clarify that olive oil does not score a red. It gets a C. So in fact, it's the best scoring type of oil within the vegetable oils and fat category. So it's the healthiest oil within the category. And when it comes to honey is just sugar. So it's just common sense that it should get an E. But I think there is a misunderstanding as to what Nutri-Score is, or as to what any front of pack label is, and how it relates to dietary guidelines. Dietary guidelines tell you how much of different food categories you should eat to get a healthy diet. But within different categories, you have many different types of products, and they don't have the same nutritional value. So you need to help consumers choose the healthy option within a category. And we know that despite the fact that today we have this table on the back of the pack, many consumers just struggle to make sense out of it. They cannot use it properly. So you need to translate it in a way to them so that they can use this information that is on the label. And Nutri-Score has been shown to do it very well. We also are aware of the keyhole in Sweden, but the problem with this type of label is that it only appears on the best-in-class product, the healthier choice, basically. But you don't also highlight to consumers which choices are the less healthy option, which is also very important to really guide consumers toward the healthy option. So we indeed, we have a disagreement on this, and we look forward to contributing to the further steps of the impact assessment.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I mean, we've had quite a lot of this. Mr. De Castro, would you like to just 2 sentences or of the reply?
A very good.
We can't hear you.
Job for Claire Bury, because the Commission has to try to identify an harmonized system to take on board all these different elements. Because of course. It's a question of culture, when we think the consumer, we think a consumer who should be informed, but we don't want to make the consumer choose something without understanding exactly, because the consumer make a simple idea. When he said red, it's red. I understand the question of category, but it's complicated for the consumer. The easy is just look in the color, and the color is red. And the color is red when you have a very healthy food, and it's green when you have a French fries, when you have a Coca Light, when you have such kind of food, very high transformed. And it's simple, I understand the question of category, but the consumer will simplify the choice. So this is a risk. And I think we very much have to take care about that, because I think we need to help the consumer to make a choice, not to force the consumer to make choice.
We are very lucky that we have with us today Agnes from Danone. So, we have been listening to all these debate from people, policymakers, people who write policies on the paper or review them, and you actually have to implement these things. So, what is your perspective? I mean, the corporate perspective. How has been how your experience has been with this?
Thank you. And first of all, I would like to thank you for the invite to give us the opportunity to share our perspective on this, I think, burning topic. So we all know that consumers are craving for transparency today. That's why labeling is clearly on the agenda, top agenda of our company, specifically due to the fact that we are a healthy company. We are strongly anchored in health. And clearly, nutrition is on the top of our list, because we know the relation between nutrition and health. And what we already know, according to the European regulation, we already provide consumers with detailed information on nutrition, which is given on the back of the packs, on the nutrition table. But all the studies that we have show that it's very much complex for most of the consumers, and it does not help them much to really guide their choice. So definitely we need something more simple and more visible that could be really seen at a glance by consumers when they are doing shopping. And when it comes to simple scheme, it means we have to make some synthesized, simplified scheme that takes into account the global quality of the products. And we fully support the idea of having a harmonized scheme around Europe and possibly mandatory. We really think that it's going to be helpful. So we mentioned a lot of schemes that are already existing. So we talk about the keyhole, but there is also the multiple traffic light system, the GDAs, and Nutri-Score. And as a scientist, when I have to take a decision or make a recommendation to my company, what I do, I look at science. And what the science says on all these different schemes, they have been strongly assessed on the scientific point of view by very good independent academics. And the conclusions are very clear. Among the different schemes that are existing today, the best performing one is Nutri-Score. And it's the case for many reasons. The first is that, as it was mentioned before, it's clearly allow consumers to compare foods between each others, whether they belong to the same category or not. And it's, the signal it gives is fully consistent with the food-based dietary guidelines that the national authorities are giving to people. So that's very important. Second point is that it really helps consumers to understand what is the quality, nutritional quality of their food. And there is a nice studies which has been done in 12 countries across the world, showing that it's the same kind of understanding for all consumers around the world. So there is no debate on that. And the second thing is that once they have understood what it means, it's really helped them to classify the food between healthy or less healthy and to improve the nutritional quality of their food basket. So the income is there. The type of diet they will eat at the end will be improved. And last but not least, it also fosters the food companies to improve their offer by increasing the nutritional quality of their products so that they can rate better. And we know that now we have many studies showing that higher rating is really a higher motivation in terms of purchase for the people. So, you know, it's a full set of things that we have taken into account before taking this decision. And based on this, we have decided to roll out Nutri-Score in Europe on a voluntary manner. And we started by France in 2017. And since then, we have rolled out it step by step, where it's possible, in 15 different European countries on a voluntary manner.
Sorry, you said that Nutri-Score and other nutrition labels sort of help companies to improve their portfolio. Has Danone improved its portfolio since introducing Nutri-Score?
Yeah, for sure. There was not so many, but there were some products that we discovered that could rate C instead of being B. And we say, oh, that's not consistent with what we want to deliver on the market. So we have decided to reformulate the products, removing a little bit of fat, putting a little bit more of protein or less sugar. And then we came up with a much better rating.
That's very interesting. I'm getting first questions, so maybe we could turn into them. Like one of them is for Ms. Buri. So it says, we have recently seen the Commissioner for Agriculture meeting with a consumers association who supports the inclusion of Nutri-Score nutrition labeling. Can we understand that the European Commission or the Commissioner is in favor of this particular system?
So I think I go back to what I said at the beginning, which is we haven't made a choice yet on the front of pack labelling scheme. The choice will be based on the impact assessment, the targeted stakeholder consultation, and of course on scientific advice. When we set out in the Inception impact assessment in December of last year, we went through all the different labelling schemes, and we will include those in the impact assessment. I think there have been references to several of them. I think there are two, they fall into two categories. The first is those which repeat the energy value and the nutrients in the nutrition declaration, which, as Agnès said, is already required on the back of the pack. So that will be something like the Nutri-Informed battery, which is used in Italy, I think, or the reference intakes label. Or we have the second broad category, which is those which provide information on the overall nutritional quality of food through a symbol or a letter. So here we have the Nutri-Score. We also have, as I think Paolo was referring to, the keyhole system, the keyhole logo, which is used in Sweden, Denmark, and Lithuania. We have other heart and health logos, which are used, for example, in Finland, Slovenia, and Croatia. So we're looking at all those different schemes, and we haven't taken a view yet. We will be, as I mentioned, taking advice from EFSA, the European Food Safety Agency, who will look at what national guidelines say and will look at dietary recommendations and the scientific analysis of those dietary recommendations. We'll also have this scientific literature review from our Joint Research Centre, and we will put all those different elements together to hopefully come up with a balanced proposal based on a thorough understanding of how consumers are reacting to different schemes, and also taking account of, I think Paolo puts his finger on the fact that there are certain products like olive oil, honey maybe, which have quite specific characteristics. And we're very conscious of that. And we will also take that into account in what we propose. As Paolo said, the Commission, it's quite a challenge for the Commission, because in a way we will have to square the circle in terms of everything that's out there. And we know there are different views. We know that because we've had discussion amongst the member states, but we're still optimistic that we can look at this, bring the best of the science forward and come up with something that will be consensual and which will mean that we can have a system which applies across the single market, which will be good for consumers because simple and transparent, but also good for businesses because there's one system of labelling and not a multitude of different systems of labelling.
Thank you so much. There is another question about the processing of food products. A person who is asking says that Nutri-Score, especially, that doesn't seem to take the processing of food into account while assessing a product. And there is a relation between the non-communicable diseases and highly processed food. Do you think that the label which is going to be mandatory, should it take this factor into account or not? Maybe Camille could help us here.
Yes, it's a very interesting question, which indeed has been a quite recurring point raised. I think there is a misunderstanding as to what a front of pack label can do and cannot do. Really, the role of such label is to translate the information that you have on the back of pack and that we know consumers are not able to use fully at the moment. And there is also a debate among scientists as to whether it's at all feasible to integrate information on the level of processing in any type of scoring system. At the moment, there seems to be no possibility to do it scientifically. But we think it's already quite significant to achieve, to be able to translate in a way that is easily understandable the information that you have on the back of pack so that consumers can actually use it. And we know Nutri-Score does it very well. And taking perhaps a step back and looking at this criticism that there are some ultra-processed products that score well with Nutri-Score. In fact, there has been research carried out showing that most ultra-processed food based on the so-called NOVA classification actually get a D or an E with Nutri-Score, which are the lower scores on the scale. And this is mostly due to the fact that very often the level of processing is also correlated with the amount of fat, sugar, and salt in products. And again, I think it boils down to perhaps the interconnection between dietary guidelines on the one hand and front of pack label on the other end. I think the dietary recommendations are clear. Consumers should favor minimally processed foods. However, we know that for many reasons, be it convenience, time, taste, you name it, they also buy processed products. So when they do so, they need to have clear information on the front of pack to guide their choice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Many questions coming in. Thank you so much. I will try to address as many of them as possible. There is one of them that I find quite interesting. Isn't it a risk to speak about labeling and information without talking about the financial capacity of consumers to buy healthier, more sustainable food? And about states' responsibility to procure healthy and sustainable food. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Mr. De Castro would like to say something about this.
Well, thank you, Zosia. No, I just, before try to give an answer to this question, I would like to use 1 minute to make a comment to our friend from Danone, because I fully understand the opportunity of Nutri-Score for food company. I understand that, in particular for the biggest company, and it become a powerful tools, Nutri-Score, in the end of the food company, which will be able to influence eating habit, and so they can control the commercial flow. And however, this system, it doesn't protect consumer health. Not only this, and remember what the problem for our heritage, century-old culinary tradition, for example, all the geographic indication, for example. If you were invited here, all the product of GDI or geographic indication will be totally against this kind of system like Nutri-Score. And this is why we are worried, and all the farmer community is worried. There was no one farmer unions who are in favor in this system. So I think it's not easy to find a solution. I don't have a specific solution. I don't want to make, pushing the Italian idea of Nutri-Inform. But we should be very carefully, because our consumer should be informed, not should be, pushed in a direction. And this is important. And at the same, try to make an answer to the question. Well, this is a problem, of course, because the healthy food are sometimes are shared, but it's not always like this. If you can eat a traditional and not transformed food like cheese, ham, they are not always very, very, very expensive. So it depends, of the choice of the consumer. Sometimes it's a much more expensive the transformed food than the natural one.
Anis, would you like to reply to Mr. De Castro about the benefits you, as the company, as Danone, could have out of Nutri-Score?
Yes. So thanks a lot for the comment, and maybe. Mr. De Castro is overestimating the power that we can have as a food company, because even though we are a big food company, the share of stomach that we represent is very small in reality. So the idea is just that we contribute to a healthy diet, and we do our best to provide first good products on the market, and then provide the signal to consumer where the best products are, how we can help them, empower them to make more balanced choices. And it's true for all the actors on the industry, food industry. Nutri-Score could be a very good lever to orient, to drive the renovation and the innovation roadmap of the companies, and then be able to enlarge the offer of more healthy products.
Thank you so much. We've discussed the nutrition labeling quite a lot. I would like to take the rest of my time to talk a little bit about the sustainability framework. There are a couple of questions in the panel here about this. The new sustainability label or sustainability framework, this is still in the works, I understand, in the Commission, even though in some countries, in some companies, there have been attempts to introduce labels that would sort of take into account the whole environmental impact of a product, not only the nutritional impact. Camille, I know that you have been working on your assessment on this. Can you maybe share what is the European Consumer Organization viewpoint on that?
Yes, but if I may very briefly, I'd just like to pick up on what Mr. De Castro said about big versus small companies and Nutri-Score. I think we really need to do away of this big versus small discussion in France. Many users of Nutri-Score as SMEs. And I was having a very interesting debate the other day on Roquefort cheese and Nutri-Score. And in fact, in France, the production of Roquefort cheese is mostly done by big multinationals. So in fact, I think we really need to be a bit more nuanced on this debate, big versus small companies. So that is for Nutri-Score. Now coming to your question on sustainable food labeling or sustainable scoring systems, because this is what has appeared on the market. We are indeed having a reflection with our members. And at the moment, I think what we can say is that there is interest on the part of consumers to have information on the sustainability of food products. 57% of them in a survey that we conducted have said that they would like this information to be mandatory on food products. However, we are a bit concerned about the methodology. We know that there is a lot of these labels that are based on the life cycle assessment methodology and the PEF, the product environmental footprint methodology. And they are concerned that this methodology is not fully well suited to agri-food products. It, for instance, disregards certain benefits of organic farming, for instance. And today we are just marking the first observance of EU Organic Day. So I think we need to be careful in terms of which criteria will be or which impacts will be covered in any such scoring system for sustainability. How do we also integrate the social dimension? Because we hear a lot about the ecological or environmental dimension, but sustainability has multiple dimensions, and we don't even have a clear definition as to what this means for in an EU context. So there are a lot of question marks. We see that there are different initiatives developing on the market. Also in France, there are various trials that may lead the government to select a label at the end of the day. So we are watching all these initiatives, but it's really important from our perspective that any label is tested with consumers to see whether it meets the expectation and that they can really understand what is behind such label. So we are very much interested in seeing these initiatives, and we will shortly publish a new position paper on this, which we will share with pleasure with you.
Thank you. We're looking forward. And yes, I know that Danone also has some experience with that. Could you maybe share that with us?
Yeah, so, sure. So as for nutritional information, we are very keen to also offer some transparency on the environmental impact of our products. So the debate is it's less advanced in terms of science than in nutrition. But clearly, we are following the experience that are currently being developed. And you mentioned in France, we currently have a very tight regulatory context that fosters some actors to make some advances. And some of you may have seen this called EcoScore appearing on some apps, which are quite popular among consumers. And we also have the French Agency for the Environment, who has launched some big experimentation at different levels during the last 18 months to be able to have some data that can help them to define what would be the most suitable scheme. So on our side, we don't have any position yet because it's really too soon. Clearly, ADEME is currently doing a scientific assessment of EcoScore, and we are waiting for this with great anticipation. But we are following very closely, and we also now we are partnering with another initiative in the United Kingdom called a score from Earth Foundation, and which is quite different. But from all of what we have seen, we have been able to define some key principles that we think the final scheme should comply with. So it's a little bit like Nutri-Score, like our nutritional labeling. First, it should be very easy to understand by consumers. So it means that it should not. It should be an integrative approach, the same manner. It should not focus only on one aspect of the environment, because now we are talking a lot about carbon footprint of products, but you know, carbon is just one part of the problem. We have many other issues regarding biodiversity, pollution, air quality, etc. So it's important that the scoring scheme that will be developed integrate all of this together. And then also very important that the scheme is also able to recognize all the efforts that are being done, specifically at the farming level. As said Camille, today a PEF approach or pure LCA approach is not able to recognize the benefits of the organic farming as an example. And that's, I think, a true concern if you really want organic to become somewhere a benchmark of the future agriculture in Europe. So this is where we are today, and we are really looking for get more insights and more experience to be able in the future to come up with a proposal. And we can also imagine that could be voluntary in the first phase, then mandatory, but for sure we need an harmonized approach in the same manner as for nutrition.
Thank you so much. Mr. De Castro, I mean, we've heard a little bit from the Commission side what is the work on the sustainable labeling framework. Is there any talk, any sort of appetite for such a label in the European Parliament?
Yeah, absolutely. We follow this approach. Not only in the CAP reform, but even in the farm to fork strategy, I think all the information to the consumer to understand when the producer go much more in the sustainable way, when they are, in animal welfare more ambitious. I think we should inform consumer to all this information because it's an important way to describe the high level of quality that we have in Europe. So the high standard, and that can be even in a comparative analysis with other countries in the world. Europe can play this job, because our standards are much more ambitious than the other. So I think if we can communicate to the consumer such value, that can be interesting. So we are in favor of that. And of course, the risk is to make too much information for the consumer. So we should find the right way to combine these elements and to try to give a good information. But a good information to make the right choice, not to force the choice, not to influence, but to give information and the consumer should decide. This is very important. This is at the basis of our point of view. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Castro. While I have you here speaking, I'm also thinking about the other type of labeling that has been mentioned today, the origin labeling. I know that it's also quite important for you and for Italy. There is an attempt in the farm to fork, but how far do you think this attempt will go or should go?
No, in origin labeling is not only in Italian pushing, but this large part of European Parliament voted already in favor to have this information for the consumer. So I think we have a large majority to support that. All kind of new kind of labeling system to give information for sustainability to animal welfare, we look in favor of that. We look in favor. We are waiting the proposal of the Commission and try to have a more element to inform consumer to the high standard we use. So the Parliament will be in favor of that, and I believe that we should improve absolutely this system because now the consumer want to know this information, particularly when we talk about animal welfare issue. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. But just let me just follow up a little bit on that. But origin label on which products? Because this is the big discussion, right? Like, should it be on meat? Should it be on dairy? And that's it? Should it be on all products?
We already have.
Sorry? Yeah.
We already have a lot of these. Remember, we have the information for meat, for example. We have for fruit and vegetables. But we need to enlarge to all the products to know the origin of the agriculture product. So if I buy a tomato bean, I want to be where the product come from. Is Chinese or is Europe? So it's important to know where the raw materials, the agriculture product come from.
Ms. Burry, could you maybe tell us, like, how far do you think the Commission is willing to go, like, in labeling those different products? I mean, will it be all products, you think? Will it be just some products? Like, what do you think, how far we could go in labeling these products?
So this obviously is going to be part of our impact assessment as well. I mean, what we see, of course, is that there are certain products where consumers are particularly interested in knowing what the origin is. I think we're concerned because at the moment we've got a number of national schemes, an increasing number of national schemes, which means that the internal market is not really as it should be. And that if we were therefore to extend the origin requirements, mandatory origin requirements, this might help operators, in particular the smaller operators, who are faced with trying to comply with a number of different origin requirements in national schemes. But I think the exact extent of it is something which is very much part of the work that we're doing now, the assessment we're doing and the consultations that we're doing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, the time for this debate is up, but I think we covered all the most important and burning topics when it comes to food labeling. Thank you so much to our panelists for taking the time. And my colleague, Gabriela Galindo, will be joining you in 10 minutes to lead the next discussion on diet trends in Europe and beyond. So stay with us and stay tuned. Thank you very much.